Being an underground dance music DJ for the past 20 years, House of the Dead Remake was pleasantly reminiscent of the 5 AM closing time outside Sunday Central in the early 2000s. But has time been as kind to my memories of this classic Sega arcade game? I'm Kutski, and this is my review of House of the Dead Remake for Nintendo Switch.
Get ready!
I think most people checking out this review will be familiar with the original game, but if not, House of the Dead was an on-rails arcade light gun shooter released in the late 90s. Despite there being over a dozen sequels and spin-offs over the years, the much-loved original only ever made it home via the port to the Sega Saturn. The premise to the game is as simple and cliché as it gets. A crazy doctor infects people with a virus to create his own army of zombies. You're the special agent assigned the fun task of going into the mansion to pump round after round into the zombies, blowing off appendages in every direction to save the day. There are only 4 levels in the game, each set in a different location with their own end-of-level boss, and a single playthrough will probably take you around 30 minutes. But with all the various paths through the game and the multiple endings, there's a lot of replay value, especially when taking into account the local multiplayer and the online high score leaderboards. As the name indicates, the House of the Dead remake is in fact totally built from the ground up, with an updated graphical look and sound. The most obvious difference here are the controls. There's no easy way to play a light gun game on modern systems in an authentic way due to the latency introduced on modern TVs. House of the Dead Remake does its best to offer a variety of ways to play, allowing the user to find their most preferred method. Surprisingly to me, the default control scheme is using the analog stick to move a crosshair around the screen. This was a fairly competent way to play the game, but for me, it just felt completely lifeless and sterile. Next, I switched on the motion control, which works on both the Joy-Cons and the Switch Pro controller. Then it became instantly clear why the developer chose the previous control scheme as the default. Although playing with the motion controls was instantly more fun, it was also wildly inaccurate, with the main issue being the constant gyro drift. This can be corrected with a click of the thumbstick, but even so, trying to shoot a zombie without hitting a hostage was near impossible for me with any consistency. The last, and by far best, control method for me was the combination of both gyro and thumbstick controls. I was primarily using the thumbstick to move the crosshair to the area of action on the screen, and then gentle movements with the gyro to fine-tune my aiming. It does sound like a compromise here, but honestly, after a few goes, I really settled into it, and that's when I started to enjoy the game without the frustration of battling with the controls. It might not be instantly intuitive, but after a couple of goes, I think it really is the best way to play by far. I do have to note here though, that I don't think many people are aware that the Switch is compatible with pretty much any standard USB mouse, should the developer choose to support it. I'm sure not many people are going to be playing their Switch at a desk with the space to use a mouse, and I've no idea how difficult it would have been to implement it, but I think this would have been the perfect game to make use of the feature. I wonder if it could be added in a future update without a huge investment of time. So, the arcade experience is here, fully intact. Again, this is a remake, so it's not going to be one-to-one identically faithful to the original, but I couldn't notice anything different worth getting upset about. There are 4 difficulty settings: easy, medium, hard and arcade. There's an option for a more modern scoring system with multipliers, and the inclusion of an all-new Horde mode which claims to throw up to 15 times the enemies as the original version. This remake does offer a variety of quality of life improvements, such as varying degrees of aim assist, auto reload, the ability to use your high score to buy more continues if you run out, and starting the game from any chapter that you've already completed. Technically, the performance of the game isn't great, unfortunately. Even with the option to trade graphical fidelity for increased performance, the game frequently stutters and drops frames. I'm not particularly sensitive to these things in general, but it was something that I did clearly notice at times. It didn't distract so much that it took away from my enjoyment of the game, but it did make me lust to play a version of the game that was at a buttery smooth 60 frames a second. Overall, I think the developer did an amazing job with this remake. The only negatives that I can poke at are actually the limitations of the Switch hardware itself, such as the flaky gyro, the annoying rumble, and the subpar performance. But in every instance, it seems that the developer was aware of these issues and has offered as many options as possible to work around any personal annoyances. You're never going to be able to fully replicate the old school arcade light gun experience at home now, without a relatively complex custom setup like the Sinden light gun with a PC. But if this is as close as we can get with the hardware and setup that we've already got with no extra peripherals, then that's close enough for me. I really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this review and found it helpful. As always, if so, please drop me a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with any future videos. And let me know in the comments any other arcade light gun games that you'd like to see ported. I've heard rumours that the developer's already working on a House of the Dead 2 remake, which I'm excited about. I'd like to see the Virtual Cop series remade too, but accuracy was a more important factor in those games, so I don't think it'd necessarily lend itself well to the new control schemes. Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Kutski signing out, keeping the games alive.